all these companies spewing out misinformation, misguiding information at a time when the public was vulnerable because they wanted to really know and understand this. They were curious. They were looking at it for a relief for a lot of different types of ailments, and people
Sure.
just peddling BS.
Welcome to another episode of Nurify and Beautify, the podcast that shows you the other side of beauty. Every week, we interview experts about the world of beauty, health, and wellness so that you can make informed decisions that are right for you. My name is Linda Yates, and this week we are welcoming Ella Cressman onto the show. Ella is a certified international skincare educator with a strong focus on cutting-edge technologies and culturally relevant skincare solutions. She is a licensed esthetician and the owner of the Ella Crest Skincare Clinic in Colorado. She's also one of the hosts of the SD Talk podcast. And we are so glad she took time out of her busy schedule to come speak with us today about the secrets that she has seen behind closed doors in the skincare industry. If this is your first time listening to Nurify and Beautify, welcome. We are so happy to have you. And if this isn't your first time, we hope you'll follow us or subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app and share this show with someone who can benefit from all this amazing knowledge. Now, let's get into the interview. Ella, we are so excited. I'm so excited to have you join us tonight or today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
I am so excited to be here. I can't wait. I know we're going to have a great time talking about these subjects.
Yes, and this is something that I'm not at all familiar with, so I am just going to soak it all up from you. And we are, as I said, thrilled to have you on Nurify and Beautify because uncovering those secrets behind the health and beauty industry is exactly what we're all about. A lot of people want more information about what goes into their products, but they don't have the ability to talk to industry insiders such as yourself. So we want our audience to know what's out there, both the good and the bad, so they can make informed decisions about what they purchase or use. So again, Ella, we're glad you're here. And Ella, just so everybody knows, is an esthetician, and she's the owner of Ella Crest Skincare and an international skincare educator.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to start by going back to the beginning with the early years of your career. Would you share what your experience was like?
Yeah, it's an interesting trajectory because very early years, I was wanting to be a nurse or a cosmetologist. And I ended up leaning into the nursing side of things. And as circumstance had it, I was working in an Alzheimer's home while I was going to school. And I'm like, this is so emotional. I couldn't do it. I'm too empathetic. I can't handle this right now. I was 18 years old and it was just rocking my world. So I'm going to do the least emotional thing. And that was business. So I took my degree in business with an emphasis in accounting and ended up in the construction industry.
Wow.
Yeah. And even in there, in a niche part of the industry under cost accounting. And that's important just because I like to be special. So I had reached a professional ceiling at the end of my 20s. And I'm like, what am I doing? This is not where I want to be. I'm already done. And I'm not even 30 yet. It was a couple years before my 30th birthday. And it was a blackhead that changed my life forever.
I love that.
Yeah, it was, my dad hates when I tell the story, but he had actually picked me up from a business trip. This was before Uber. He picked me up from him at the airport from a business trip, and I'm explaining to him, Dad, there's something out there, and looking forward and moving my head around. And I turn to look at him and I see either the biggest whisker or a blackhead. And all I wanted to do in that moment was free it, squeeze it. And I was like, that was my Oprah moment. I'm an esthetician. I'm going to school. So I did that, worked full time and went to school full time in the evening. And I moved into working After I graduated, I started my business right away. So I went from getting a paycheck to paying to work somewhere. Totally different. And shortly after opening my business, the economic crash of 2007, 2008. So I had to learn. I learned how to adapt in an industry or in a career path that at the time was very much associated with luxury or extra when people were cutting those types of things out. So I
Mm-hmm.
persevered. I became a corrective skincare specialist because people wanted correction, but they didn't want a facial. And then I became an educator, and the rest is history. I became an educator, I became a formulator, and that is how I progressed through there. So I've seen a lot of things
Mm-hmm.
in my tenure, coming up on 20 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that people aren't necessarily aware of.
Yeah.
Then we look at the last 5 years of the profession and the merging of public awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Even 10 years ago, it started, but really concentrated in the last 5 years. And it's a different game for professional skincare practitioners and for companies or manufacturers. I think a lot of that is relevant or obvious in the ads we see. You see a
Mm-hmm.
lot of advertisements focused now on ingredients or results, where before it was totally different, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Very interesting. What a phenomenal story and journey. And yeah, that's awesome that you had that awareness about yourself, right? Early on so that you could change courses. That's awesome. So when did you start seeing that dark side of this industry? And what was that like for you? And how did you respond at the time?
Oh, from school. So the dark side of the industry for me was a lot about perception and what kind of box we were supposed to fit in. So it started in school, then I didn't really notice it, and became a rep and an educator for different brands. And that's when I started to see some of the shadows of the industry, um, particularly. And without sharing too much, I want to kind of give you some insight. Listen, it's not unique to the skincare industry because we've seen, let's call them creative marketing tactics in other industries. For example, food labeling as a fat
Mm-hmm.
free, fat
Right.
free licorice, like obviously, but it's meant to manipulate, right? So there are a lot of if thens. But when I started to see it most prevalently, there were some things for different companies that I had represented that didn't sit well with me. For example, campaigning on the importance of physical block sunscreen and just highlighting the fact that chemical sunscreen is so bad. And they impress this into us as representatives and educators. So we are impressing this into our professional practitioners who are then impressing it into the consumer. But just so we're aware, a physical sunscreen is so much more expensive to formulate because you have to suspend the material in a certain kind of a way. So chemical sunscreen is way cheaper to formulate
Mm-hmm.
and produce. A big huge price difference. So when that company had this message, this charge of as physical block is the only way to go, and then a year later introduces chemical sunscreens, it's like a head scratcher. So that was the first time I was extremely disappointed with manufacturers.
Sure.
And then one part I did skip over in my journey was as I finished my formulator certifications and diploma, there was a huge CBD market starting where I'm at. I'm in
Mm-hmm.
Denver, Colorado. So it was this amazing time. It was so much fun to be a part of that. So that was another story. A speed date changed my life there, but uh, I'll tell you next time. But so,
Yes, we're gonna have you come back over that. Yeah.
okay.
Let know.
So, story on pause, but I is asked to formulate for CBD lines, and so I wanted to know. I love physiology, I love anatomy, I love chemistry, which is why I wanted to do nursing, and even there's a lot of that in cosmetology, the all of those parts. So I wanted to understand more. How does CBD work or cannabis uh, byproducts work, particularly for the skin? How does that happen? Because you need to know what to put it with in
Right.
order for it to be effective. And then who is it for? And most importantly, who is it not for?
Mm-hmm.
So I dug deep into the research, but also the availabilities for classes. So I'm certified in so many different things. It's awesome. It's fun. A lot of them are necessary, some of them are not necessary, but there was at the time this rush of people wanting to invest in that side because it was, as they say, on and popping, like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was just blowing up. So a lot of people wanted to invest in those types of products or to be in that industry. And that was an easy entry point, was the CBD market, especially from
Mm-hmm.
hemp.
Gotcha.
The problem with that was there was so much misinformation. It was a lot of if then. So it created these divides in the industry of ideologies of what could work and what couldn't work, and this almost fight between full spectrum or isolate and how
Mm-hmm.
those different components work together. But there's so much more that went into it. So that was another really, in my opinion, tragic thing that happened, because you were
Mm-hmm.
just all these companies spewing out misinformation, misguiding information at a time when the public was vulnerable because they wanted to really know and understand this. They were curious. They were looking at it for a relief for a lot of different types of ailments, and people
Sure.
just peddling BS.
Right. Wow. So as you've gone through the different career changes and worked in different capacities, did you see some of these same issues then repeated, or were there different problems at different levels?
Yes, there's still problems to this
Uh-huh.
day. And it goes into that just manipulating, I would say, manipulating the public,
Mm,
the perception. But here's the thing, as I mentioned, those last 5 years, the public has changed. They don't trust, they don't trust a
mhm,
lot of things. So I see it as a practitioner, as a skincare therapist or an esthetician, a licensed esthetician, in dealing with clients. I feel the clients change. They don't just give you their trust anymore
mhm.
because they've been
Yeah.
sold on so much. And so it's really, really important. And a lot of practitioners now on the other side and working in as a manufacturer representative, in my case, doing education, I see that distrust between practitioner. And it's unfortunate that some manufacturers will bend. They will
Mhm,
bend messaging. They will, if then it. We have a couple of new ingredients in the marketplace that they're not talking about the full capabilities. They're preying on vulnerabilities. On the flip side of that, we have this other opportunity for truth fighters to come
mhm,
forward and fight for the honest things that are happening. But that, to be quite honest with you, Linda, those have a lot of darkness around those right fighters, right? The ones that are
mhm.
supposed to help and be honest and be transparent. They're not. They're
Wow.
opaque.
Okay.
I know.
Man.
So it leaves you going, who can I trust or what am I supposed to do? But there's a lot of tools. There's a lot of things out there that lend to misconceptions and
Mhm,
lend to misunderstandings. And though developed on a positive intention, you're now getting an interesting consequence. So, have you seen any of those ingredient scanning apps? These are supposed to tell you, these are supposed to be the alarm for the companies, like, they've got something bad. Have you ever tried them?
I have not tried them, but I've definitely heard about it, and I was gonna ask you about that. So, yeah, let's yeah, let's talk about that for a minute.
There's
So
two sides. There's these apps that you can download and they're free, or there might be a slight subscription to it, and you just take your phone into Whole Foods or into your esthetician's office, your doctor's office, wherever you buy your products from,
mhm,
and scan, and it's going to pop up a rating from no, I don't think so, to yeah, this is good. And that rating is usually color coded, or it's very simple, like a 1 through 4.
mhm,
The problem with that is the reasoning behind the positive, or let's just say one of my favorite products got a negative rating.
mhm,
And I went to see why. Why did it
mhm,
get a negative rating? So there's a lot of different apps. Some will just tell you because I said so. And some apps will be like, well, here's the supporting evidence on why this is bad. It's this ingredient, and this ingredient is linked to something malefic. And so that's why. Okay. And then other apps will tell you it's this ingredient, it's linked to something, here's the paper on it. So
Mhm.
finally, at that one that was the most involved, I was able to click, and the paper that supported their reasoning, their rating
Mhm.
reasoning, was not even related to skincare. So
Wow.
good intention, like meant well intended, but
Mhm.
something's wrong here. So
Yeah.
now all of them had a warning for that ingredient, but the consideration was like one ingredient in particular was like it's known to have some kind of consequence when consumed by the gallon. Well, we're not. We're not drinking it, first of all.
Right.
And second of all, the amount in here was like the second to last ingredient in the entire formulation. So what I would compare it to in an analogy is people who are concerned with hypertension, and they're
Mhm.
saying, I have to stay away from salt. So it would make sense that they
Mm.
would stay away from potato chips. But in this
Mhm.
relevant into this formulation, it was a similar amount that you might find in a chocolate cake just to enhance flavor. But it's,
Mm.
put a little pinch of salt in a
Right.
chocolate
Right.
cake to make the flavor better. But
Yeah.
it's not going to run you risk for hypertension the same way potato chips were. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, but is there a way to determine though what apps are good or that can help you? I mean, is there a way to kind
I
of go through all that, or is it just the best thing to do is to follow all those steps to see what their source is? Is that what is it that you're recommending?
I would recommend working with an app that would have that sources. And if you felt the need
Okay.
to follow through, unfortunately, if you're at that point,
Mhm.
go all the way through
Yeah. Okay.
because some of the research was outdated, some of the research was spot on. There was
Mhm.
some things that some of the ones that were coming up bad were not good, but then on the other side there was some apps where some of the products that were coming up good were not good, but they're
Yeah.
paying to be part of it. They're
Wow.
paying
Yeah.
to be accepted. So it's hard to know exactly what to do and where to go
Mhm.
and what
Yeah.
to get.
So these topics that kind of we've been talking about, have you seen any powerful shifts in the industries? And what does it take to make big changes in the industry? And is there a way that consumers can push the industry towards more accountability and transparency?
I think that the industry pressures that are coming from the public, the head scratching, the are you sures, and what that's doing to a lot of the manufacturers is going, okay, fine. Uncle, I say uncle. It's not that bad, but you know what? We'll change it anyways. And often. So I think there is that movement going
Mm-hmm.
towards it. And I think the other thing that a lot of companies have is their ingredients listed right on the website. So
Mm-hmm.
it gives you an opportunity to look at it. So what I would give advice to consumers is ask the question. Don't just look and say no. Let's look at, for example, acne, and there's this whole idea of acne safe ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
And if you some of that's true and some of that's not true. And it came up recently. I saw coconut oil in this product, so it's not acne safe. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the whole formula, easy, like that's what we've been taught. Like just scan
Mm-hmm.
the ingredient deck and make your assumptions here. But the thing is, the coconut oil in particular was in a cleanser. So a cleanser is not staying on. And there's also, if you look two ingredients past that, there was a coconut amino. And so it
Mm-hmm.
was really that those two had to work together. No problem. I didn't mind explaining that because I love talking skin. I love speaking skincare.
Mm-hmm.
But I was grateful that the consumer asked the question instead of just passing it by
Okay.
because it was an opportunity to educate rather than coconut oil sitting on the face. And then there's something called comedogenic, which is that's another podcast, but that is better to just ask the question. So don't be afraid to ask why.
Mm-hmm.
And then also be open to the explanation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's good. That's great advice. I love that. Uh, the what advice would you give someone who is hearing this and that and wants to update their skincare routine? And how can they avoid the shady stuff and find safe, effective products? Let me just give you just a brief example. Okay, there's a lotion company out there that I've used for years and years, and there's ingredient. I like shea butter. I've always liked that. And then I remember when they started talking about, well, now it has hydraulic acid, and I'm like, I have no clue what that is. And so I share that story because I'm not staying up on all this stuff. And I'm like, so they're saying this is a great thing. So is this a great thing? How do I find out? You know.
I think that is not uncommon, Linda. I think a lot of people have go through that. And also there's so much out there. How do you know what to pick? And we go through seasons literally 4 times a year, There's our needs change, our
Mhm.
cellular metabolism shifts a little bit at different points. And so where we might need a little less shea and a little more hyaluronic acid at certain times, and it might be opposite at other times. So let's just talk about really quickly the difference between a shea butter and a hyaluronic acid.
Okay. Great.
It's oil and water. So shea butter would be thicker and hyaluronic acid would be thinner and water. And guess what? Your skin needs both of those. So
Mhm.
the quantity and so on. The other thing about the industry is it is so much fun to be a part of because there's always something else to learn.
Mm.
And the professionals in this industry, they are constantly taking classes and learning about new
Mhm.
products, new ingredients, new modalities, new opportunities for treatment. So I'm going to be honest that they are going to be your best resource.
Mhm.
They're
Okay.
going to be someone you can develop a relationship with and ask those questions. You can trust them.
Mhm.
I would suggest a skincare audit at least once a year because it changes.
Mhm.
Um, with my clients in particular, I always keep them guessing because I'm constantly moving the products around based on what they've got going on in their life, what the season is,
Uh-huh.
because it's just and they're happy. But a
Mhm.
skincare audit. So a skincare audit would mean taking all of your products to your professional and asking them what's appropriate for you for your individual skin
Mhm.
type, not your neighbor, not your sister-in-law's cousin who's what they're using necessarily. What's
Mhm.
good for you?
Mhm.
Even not what the TikTok influencers are using. What's good
Mhm.
for you? So a licensed professional is trained to look and analyze at all different types of customizable opportunities and then suggest what you have, um, if it's appropriate, if how to sequence it. Put this one
Mhm.
first, use this one a couple times a week and so on, or
Yeah.
don't use this anymore. That's often what I find too. People are like, oh, I went to Costco, there was 2 in a pack.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
it was convenient. All the psychology of the trying to get someone to purchase, it's
Mhm.
very tempting. So, okay,
Mhm.
cool, but why do you need it is key. So that's what I would suggest. Find a good skincare
Okay.
practitioner, ask them to perform an audit for you, and then make suggestions. A good practitioner will be able to suggest products they carry, but also anything that you can get that's easy to find.
Okay. That's great. And I admit I haven't been to one for a very long time. So, because I just kind of rely on my makeup counter person. And if those of you who've listened to the show, I keep talking about my makeup counter person. Yeah, anyway, so it's always fun to pick our guest brains about their favorite products. So, do you have any that you really love right now?
Oh my gosh, I do. There's a copper tide mist from Dermastart brands. It's in their Ocetical lines. I am in the change of life. Things are different.
Yeah.
I'm in Colorado. It's very dry, it's very arid, and I'm having opposite. I'm not having hot flashes, I'm having cold spells.
Oh, my word.
Even
Yeah.
in the summer, I'm like, "Give me a blanket." So I've always been, doing things my own way. But that copper tide mist is so great, and I use a little bit in my scalp too for another consequence of that. Some ingredients that I could never live without. Also, they have the Sport Shield SPF. It smells so good. It goes on amazing, which is so important here in Colorado because it's sunny 360 days a year or something,
Mhm.
330 days a year, I believe. But I
Okay.
love their Sport Shield. Key ingredients, you mentioned hyaluronic acid. That's an important one, depending on where you're at in your journey of life, peptides are really important.
Okay.
Just the right amount of exfoliation is important too. So all
Okay, that's
important.
great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. So if our listeners want to find out more about you or follow you or connect with you, your show is the Etsy Talk podcast. Where else can they find you?
Yep, ASCP SD Talk podcast, where we talk about all things skin. It's myself and my co-host Maggie Stasek. It's fun. You can find me on Instagram at Ella Cressman, and if you listen to my podcast, you'll know I'm more of a voyeur. I like to watch everybody, but I do post sometimes. You can take a peek into my life. And then at Ella Cress Skincare or ellacress.com if you have any other questions.
Awesome. Well, man, Ella, I've loved visiting with you. So thank you so much for joining me today. I know Nora really was sad to miss our opportunity to chat. So
Ooh,
yeah,
well,
maybe next time we'll have you come back and we can have Nora with us too, because I know
then
she'll have even more questions.
I'll tell about that speed date story.
Okay, sweet.
And I have other stories about the dark side of the industry. I'll just tell you later.
Cool.
Thanks,
All right.
Linda.
Thank you. It was so much fun speaking with Ella. And I believe my biggest takeaway from our conversation today was ask the question. Ask questions. It's just like me asking about shea butter and hydraulic acid. Ask questions. And I also, quite frankly, I'm going to give you two takeaways since Nora's not with us tonight. My other takeaway was go get an audit. Go sit with a skincare professional and get an audit about what you're doing. Those are my biggest takeaways visiting with Ella. I want to thank you. We want to thank you for listening to Nourify and Beautify, where we show you the other side of beauty. And if you want more information about us or to read our blog, check us out at nourify-beautify.com. I'm Linda Yates. See you next time.